Hello. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to the third session on poetry. And I have specifically concentrated on acoustic features of poetry. So, as a form of literature, poetry, the form has its own characteristics and features, or we can say poetry has different dimensions and elements. Yesterday, I have already discussed there are three major dimensions. Number one, lexical and thematic dimensions, and in which we find diction. Diction, that is the choice of words, and at the same time, how they are organized. The words, how they are organized. So it is diction, rhetorical figures, and themes, which are lexical and thematic dimensions. Visual dimension, of course, the stanzas, their pattern, just like a couplet. Then you see how couplet, tercet, terza rima, quatrain, 5 line stanzas, and so on. So, just I'll okay, yes. So I'll be back to you. Yes, my intention is that to focus on rhythmic or acoustic or dimensions of poetry. So the meter, generally, what is rhythm? So I'll come to you with the rhythm. So what is rhythm? So rhythm is a pattern which is produced by variations of stress. And what is stress? Of course, it depends on how we put a stress or the audibility of a particular syllable. We find pattern everywhere. Even in nature, we find pattern. Every day the sun rises, there is sunset, there is a seasons. We find there is a kind of rhythm. Our heartbeats, it is a rhythm. We find walking, there is a rhythm. In dancing, there is a rhythm. In sports, there is a rhythm. So we have the sense of rhythm. So this rhythm, we find so the rhythm we find in poetry as well. So the rhythm, now see, there is a sense of rhythm we people have. Human being has a rhythm. And in literature particularly, there is a rhythm. And the rhythm is achieved through the rhythm, which is achieved through the patterns of stress and unstressed syllables. In English particularly, I mean the language, for those are not native speakers of English, so it depends upon the arrangement of stresses. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, sir. If I'm audible, it's okay. Fine. So, uh, okay, now it is visible. I hope it is visible to you. Yes, sir. Yes. So, while we think of poetry, there is a music, and this music. Sorry for disturbance. And here we find a rhythm in poetry. I was talking about a rhythm. So there is a rhythm in poetry, and the rhythm is achieved through the syllables, which are stressed and unstressed. Now, here is the meter, what we call it, meter. So what is meter? Meter is the rhythmic and systematic arrangement of syllables in verse. The rhythmic and systematic arrangement, how the words are organized in a systematic way. And of course, the syllables for syllables here, we parse a verse line or we divide a verse line into syllables. And then we consider either the syllable attracts the stress. So it depends on that one. So syllabic length in Latin verse and stress in English verse. See, here is the major point. That is, English is a stress time language. English is a stress time language, while Marathi is a syllable time language. So, stress time language and syllable time language. This is the major difference in while we study English stress, because of we try to pronounce the words in from the syllabic perspective. But English is a stress time language. Its naturalness lies in stress. So, syllable timed and stress time languages, there is a difference. For example, you'll see French language is a rhythm based, and the rhythm of French language is on the number of syllables, while the rhythm of English is based on stress. So my point is that the non-native speakers of English, they have the influence of their mother tongue and syllable time language. They do not always remain successful to find out stress and stress. So there is unpredictability of stress in English. I'll come to that one. But here are the basic metrical patterns we find. So these are basic only metrical points. Even yesterday I have mentioned some of them. The basic metrical patterns. What are the basic metric patterns? So number one, that is I am. In pattern, the spelling you have to correct. Patterns. Okay. N should be there. Number one, that is I am. So consider that syllable is the minimum distinctive unit in metrical patterns. So how the patterns are organized? Number one, that is I am. I am is a group of two syllables which are together, and among these disyllabic word or the word has two syllables, and among these two syllables one is stressed and one is unstressed. In am, you will find that the pattern is unstressed and stressed. Number two, chalky. That is the pattern we find stressed syllable is followed by unstressed. Number three, spondy. Both the syllables are stressed. Number four, ferric, what we call it, ferric. Unstressed and unstressed, both the syllables are unstressed. Number five, anapest, which has the pattern unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables. So, two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. Dactyl. In dactyl, we find three syllables which a stressed syllable is followed by two unstressed syllables. So, these are the basic 6 metrical patterns we find. There are more than that. See, these are not only enough, but while we try to divide a verse line into metrical units or foot, a verse line. Uh, so the length, I mean, the tactile, uh, the number 6 one, that is stress, unstressed, and unstressed. See, the next slide I have particularly focused on stress. So you have, I mean, you are quite acquainted with phonology. Phonology, in phonology, the basic unit is a phoneme. Phoneme is the minimum distinctive unit which cannot be further parsed or separated anymore. So phoneme is the basic unit. Phone, that means just sound. Phoneme, which is used, for example, there are 44 phonemes in English. There are so many sounds, but not all of them are used in English. Only 44 sounds which are used, we call them phoneme. Now, out of these phonemes, syllable is constructed, and in a phoneme, we find vowels are important. A syllable is divided into small chunks as well, but a syllable is an entity, and mainly the vowel is important here because of stress. When we say it is a stress, stress is attracted to the vowels. It is basically while we Marathi students, non-native students study English, we find it little bit difficult because of we have to find out the syllables, and then in syllables which vowel is important. Not all vowels are stressed. Not even a single word is without vowel. Even for example, the word button, the last n is a syllabic one. It is treated as a syllable. Is treated there as a syllable. It plays the role of a vowel, and that's what. Not all vowels are stressed in each and every syllable. Is it okay? If you have any doubts, any queries, any questions, you can write to me. My email is given to you, as well as phone number is given to you. Okay. Stressed and unstressed syllables. Some words are stressed, some syllables, not words, syllables. The words are divided into syllables. The words are divided into phonemes. A verse line is divided into syllables. And after this division, according to the stressed and unstressed syllables, we find the the tertiary as well as now see the stress we find primary and secondary stress we are aware of. We are not aware of tertiary and null. The 4 types of stresses are there. For example, the word examination. In examination, there are examination. There are 5 syllables, and among these 5 syllables, one is primary stress, the syllable that is name. It is primary stress, exa. It is a secondary stress, and just like we can put the sequence of stress to unstressed, the syllables. Now see, here are some sentences. I'm not concentrating on stress only, but unless and until we try and understand what is stress and stress in English, until then we cannot divide the verse lines into syllables and put a stress, or which syllable attract or which syllable carry a stress. Okay. So here the cat sat on the mat and ate a rat. So this is simple sentence. See, the words which carry stress, which carry meanings. And in grammar, as just we people label the words as 8 parts of speech. So now you have to classify in 2 groups, the major groups of words and minor groups of words. Noun, adjective, verb, adverb. These class changing words are carry stress because of they carry meanings. They carry meaning with them. Here you'll find in the examples, the cat sat on the mat and ate a rat. Suppose I only pronounce 4 or 5 words from this sentence. Cat, sat, mat, ate, rat. If you listen to these words, you can frame a sentence. So these are content words which carry meaning more. So the cat sat on a mat and ate a rat. So the remaining words which are functional, they do not carry or attract stress. Here, another sentence is that I want a basket of eggs. Now see, my point is here in English, there is not always stress is predictable. Emphatic, or we stress to a particular word as it does happen in our continuous speech, in day-to-day speech, in prose. It does also happen in when we analyze a poem. So I want a basket of eggs. I want a basket of eggs. So stress is on the word basket. It means not a box. Third sentence, I want a basket of eggs. So stress is on eggs. So not of orange. So stress, emphatic one. For example, I shall not vote for Mr. Bright, but will help him. So the stress is on vote and help. These are the content words, but it is an emphatic stress, what we call it. So how we can find out the natural stress in English? Okay, the natural stress, how we find, that is, we find the stress based on the vowels in a syllable. In this so how to remember the stress here, which is important. Yes, I'll go back to the yes, this is the slide. Meter in poetry. Now it is a question how to remember the metrical patterns. How to remember the metrical patterns. I am talking about the basic metrical patterns only. Okay. The basic metrical patterns you find here. Am is unstressed and stressed one. Okay. Again, here is a spelling mistake of patterns. So sorry for that. Am, I-A-M-B, am. If you write like I, small, and A-M-B, you will find I is a small, unstressed, am is stressed, am. In the same manner, trochee, tro. See, in the word I am, that is more audible. And that's what it is stressed in trochee. So more energy is required for trochee. So unstressed, stress syllable. Here you will find spondy. Both the syllables are stress. Then ferric. Here is how ferric. Both the syllables are unstressed. And pest. And a pest. So now see, consider, dear friends, there is a you will find irregularities in English. Irregularity in the sense that there is the difference between spelling and pronunciation. So the orthographic representation of English in Roman script and pronunciation, these are two different things, and that's what we get a little bit confused. So consider it that so here anapest, unstressed, unstressed, stressed, anapest. Of course, there are some indications also to find out stress. Here is dactylic, stressed, unstressed, and unstressed. So these are the basic metrical patterns we find in English. Of course, these are limited only. There are more metrical patterns as well, but still we find iambic meters, this metrical pattern, even in blank verse. Blank verse, Shakespeare had attempted, even Chaucer had also attempted iambic one. And again, I would like to attract your, I would like to acquaint with you English language. English language, there are several sources, several borrowings we find. Various sources, Greek, Latin, French, and so on. So sometimes the word origins which remain the same and carry the stress, or they have not lost their originality and not Englishized. So sometimes there is a problem of stress. Yes, come to the point. Now we divide the or any verse line into foot or feet. So if there is a only one foot in a line, we call it monometer line. When there is, suppose there is an iamb, only one, for example, the cat, that is only the two words which are there, and of course we call it iambic monometer. Like this, diameter 2 feet per line, then 3 feet per line we call trimeter, 4 feet per line we call tetrameter, 5 feet per line pentameter, 6 feet per line hexameter, 7 feet per line heptameter, 8 feet per line octameter. Like this, you can go ahead with that one. So consider that in a foot there are 2 syllables or sometimes 3 syllables, whatever it may be. Or sometimes if you see iambic pentameter, for example, iambic pentameter. Suppose here, the time of year thou mayst in me behold. So that time, that is unstressed, time is stressed. This is 1 foot. Of year, of is unstressed, year is stressed. That is second foot, what we call. Thou mayst, unstressed, stress. So here is the third we find here, in me. So me is stressed here, in unstressed. Behold, be is unstressed, hold is stressed. So according to the meter, here is iambic one. Iambs, we find 5 iambs are here, and that means it is a 10 syllable line having groups of 5 groups, 5 feet, and that's what we call it iambic pentameter. Like you can say iambic monometer, iambic diameter, iambic tetrameter, iambic trimeter, iambic pentameter, iambic heptameter, hexameter, and so on. So like this, we can go ahead. Now here is another example. For example, Assyrian anapistic tetrameter. Tetra, that means 4. 4 meters are there in the same line. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold. So the is unstressed, as is A is unstressed, C, that is Assyrian, so that is stressed, re, unstressed, unstressed, came down. Down here you'll find Assyrian, the Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold. So wolf is stressed, fold is stressed, down is stressed, C. Here is I have italicized SY. So there lies the stress. So some problems of notations I cannot show here. Next time definitely I'll try and show with the diacritic. And here you'll find, while we study language, along with the segmental features, we must be acquainted or be familiar with suprasegmental features. Stress is a suprasegmental feature. Tone, intonation, all these are suprasegmental features. So we must be aware of suprasegmental features at the same time. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold. So unstressed, stressed, stressed. Then unstressed, stressed. Came is unstressed before our Urian is unstressed. So like this, anapistic tetrameter. So 4 feet you will find, and the pattern is anapistic. So this is the way we can go ahead with. Here now, see, while we study stress, syllable, we just group the syllables, and at the same time we divide the words as well according to the syllable, and the syllables are basic to find out stressed and unstressed syllables. Either the syllable is stressed or unstressed. So here rhyme. Now see, while we study, I have already mentioned broadly yesterday that while we study music of poetry, the rhythm we find, of course, through the metrical patterns, but at the same time we find it through rhyme. So there are major 3 types. What Mario Clarer says, end rhyme, and in end rhyme we again go ahead with the classifications, just like feminine rhyme, masculine rhyme, etc. So end rhyme, the identical syllables we find which are similar at phonetic level, and we find a half rhyme, end rhyme, and according to rhyme schemes we find structures. The structures of rhyme scheme, for example, if we consider a sonnet, a 14-line poem, if it is an Italian sonnet, of course the rhyme scheme which divides, or we find the similarities in the Italian sonnet and the division into octave and sestet. In the same manner, when we consider an English sonnet or any Shakespearean sonnet, we find the pattern, rhyming pattern. Rhyming pattern classifies the stanza form. they are united according to the rhyme, and at the same time, rhyme is not always occurs at the end, but this kind of similarity, a kind of repetition at the level of phoneme, we find internally as well. And the forms just like alliteration is a kind of a repetition of a vowel or a consonant at the initial stage of a word in a particular verse line. So internal rhyme is achieved through it. So the music is achieved through it. So internal rhyme, we find alliteration, the repetition of vowels, we call it assonance. And if consonants are repeated, we call it consonance. So again, I would like to give the example of John Keats's Ode on a Gracina. Thou, still unravished bride of whiteness, thou, foster child of slow silence and slow time. Just like you will find how the vowels are repeated, how the assonance is there. So in a verse line, we find at the phonetic level a kind of different devices are used. At the level of meaning, figures of speech, we change meaning like simile, metaphor, and so on. It depends on the words which are used. See, I rhyme. Only the spelling or the word we find the similarity, but not the pronunciation. But at a first sight, we find there is a kind of similarity. See, it is the requirement or the convenience, what we call the conventions of poetry, that a poem should have music, word music should be there, but at the same time, sometimes rhymes or these metrical patterns are not followed. Because of the poet has a poetic license or the liberty to use or to employ, because of he tries to find out, he tries to implement, he tries to the newness, he tries to put newness, novelty in a poem. So this newness, what Russian formalists call literariness of language. So literariness of language can be achieved in different ways by using various devices, linguistic devices, the deviations, properly I say deviations. Now see, rhetorical figures and deviations from linguistic perspectives, the deviations we find at lexical level, at graphological level, at syntactic level, grammatical level, like its inversion of sentence, the standard order of construction of sentences, which can be broken, but there is a purpose, there is the intention of the poet. So, some poets, some writers, even Shakespeare, use blank verse. In Paradise Lost, you'll find Milton has employed blank verse. So, blank verse is the lines, the verse line having iambic pentameter verse line, we call it blank. Why we call it blank? Because of it does not have a rhyme. So that's what we call it, blank verse. Again, free verse or verse liber, it is, the traditional conventions of poetry are not followed. Repetition, this is one of the thing, repetition. For example, break, break, break. It is the title of the poem by Tennyson. Or, for example, repetition. There is a poem by Walt Whitman, and he expresses the movement of the spider, just like he, like the hand of watch. So repetition may be at a word level, just like repetition of words. The same word is repeated in the title of Robert Burns' poem, "My love is like a red, red rose." So the red and red, the same word is repeated, but it has different meanings, different connotations. Parallelism, the parallel kind of thing we find in a poem. Feminine rhyme and so many various rhymes are there. So you can go through uh, the uh, glossary of literary terms by M.H. Abrams. And I would like to suggest a book by the Poetry Handbook. It is a guide to reading poetry for pleasure and practical criticism. The book is written by John Leonard, and the publisher is Oxford University Press. Okay, then there is a small book, The Anatomy of Poetry by Marjorie Bolton. The Anatomy of Poetry, Marjorie Bolton, Marjorie, Marjorie Bolton, Boulton, Marjorie Bolton. So, some of the books you can use. Of course, while we think of meter and rhyme, some terms we must have to consider. There are several terms, only few terms I have mentioned here. Sometimes the questions are asked. For example, the two lines will be given to you. Suppose two lines of Paradise Lost are given to you and you will be asked what kind of rhymes or metrical patterns you find in these lines. And the options will be given to you. Iambic pentameter, iambic tetrameter, heroic couplet, and alexandrine. So out of these four options, you have to select one correct option, and that is blank verse. So the questions will be framed. Now think, dear friends, think how questions will be asked to you. There are certain patterns. For example, one or two lines are given from Kubla Khan, S.T. Coleridge's famous poem. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. Identify the internal rhyme or the type of internal rhyme or the sound pattern or the metrical pattern. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. So we find alliteration here. So the questions will be asked like this. Certain lines, a certain word will be asked to you, and you will be asked through the options what is the correct definition. For example, a dactyl consists of dash, and you will be asked the questions. So, a dactyl consists of or comprises, and you will be asked unstressed, stressed syllables, stressed, unstressed syllables, unstressed, stressed syllable, stressed, unstressed syllable. So you will be asked like the questions like this, 4 options, or you will be asked the question like this: what is true about dactyl? So you will be given 4 statements, and out of these statements you have to answer it properly. See, here are some terms. Alliteration you know, anapest you know, assonance, that is the repetition of the vowel sound. Here is the ballad meter, the word that is ballad meter. So it is called ballad stanza. Why do we say it is a ballad stanza? Generally it is rhymed as A, B, C, B. But it has a metrical pattern, and that's what it is called, a ballad meter. So the ballad meter, out of these 4 lines, the first line is a iambic tetrameter, while second line is iambic, iambic trimeter. Again, the third line is iambic tetrameter, and fourth line is iambic trimeter. So it is a combination of ballad meter or ballad stanza. Sometimes you'll be asked, what is the metrical pattern of ballad stanza or conventional ballad stanza? So the options will be given to you, and you will be asked to answer the correct option. So like this, you will find several. Here are only few terms I put before you, so that there should be a frame in our mind while we attempt the questions on poetry. My suggestions would be to you, think from the paper setter's perspective as well. What does he think? There are certain patterns of asking questions. Sometimes the questions on poetry, here I'll restrict my discussion to poetry. Sometimes two lines are given to you, or one line, just like, for example, I fall on the thorns of life. I bleed. I fall on the thorns of life. I bleed. These lines occur in which of the Shelley's poem? So, 4 options of Shelley's poems will be given to you. You have to rightly choose the answer, that is Ode to the West Wind. This is one pattern. Sometimes the questions will be asked to you, what kind of figures of speech is employed in these lines? Sometimes you will be asked meaning of a certain particular term. For example, sprung rhythm. Who has originated the term sprung rhythm? Okay. So concentrate on the points, and thank you very much. I'll stop here, and yes. So friends, yes, just a minute. Yes. So thank you, and sorry for the technical issues and all this. And if you have any questions, any queries, feel frank to write to me. My mail is already given. Even you can write me on my WhatsApp as well. The number is already given to you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.